Moshi Moshi.
Hello,
I'm Zeb Ramsbotham,
and I'm Annie Ramsbotham.
and we're the Rambling Ramsbothams.
Our journey might be rambling, but we hope this podcast isn't. And hello from an APA hotel. We're right next to the Kanazawa train station right now.
Or, as the locals call it, Appa.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we can now say that we've been through all the prefectures in Japan except Okinawa.
And you know what else that has in common with Appa?
It just makes me think of Avatar.
I think that the APA, it brings Japan together. Because it's Japan.
Oh, like the middle of Japan?
Yeah, it's the middle of Japan.
Oh, that's cute. I was
Yeah.
wondering if APA stood for something.
I guess I thought I did too.
It's just the middle of the word Japan.
Because, yeah, we say APA because it's in all caps, but then your friends call it the Appa.
Oh. But yeah, so
anyway,
this this episode is just kind of about the last few days of our road trip and then, getting ready for the flight tomorrow and saying goodbye to Japan. Today was our last full day in Japan together, which is kind of crazy.
yeah, a little wild.
But we'll go back to when we were in Kyushu. We ended off when we were in Nagasaki Prefecture, and we were about to get on this scenic train, the 36+3, or the Sanju Roku plus San.
Yeah, or San-Q, which is 39, since it's 36 plus
Well,
3.
it's not 39, it's 39.
Yeah, that's true. 39, sorry. But it sounds like thank you, San-Q. And so they really tried to cram in a lot of plays on different like words and symbology.
Yeah, the train's name is 36+3, which is a kind of an odd name, and so of course you're like, oh, it must stand for something. And when I was looking it up, it's because Kyushu is the world's 36th largest island, which is a kind of random thing to be like, we're the 36th largest island in the world. And then the +3 apparently comes from customers, locals, and the railway company, or make up the 3.
Okay.
So the 3 can become 1. And then, 36+3 is 39. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. It's
I
a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later too, but I think if you've been listening to our podcast, you know that we often talk about Japan and their lists. There are a lot of lists, particularly the number 3, and we'll talk about that later.
3 is a good number.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we rode this train, and it's beautiful. The outside is this really sleek black. Like, when it pulls up in the station, everybody's like, dang, look at that train. Like, it's one of those, like, wow, who's getting on that train kind of things that pulls up in the station. And I was excited.
We're getting on that train.
Yeah, I was pumped about this train. I'd been looking forward to riding Kyushu specifically. I don't know why, but that island has a ton of scenic trains on it.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it in a previous episode because for a little while we did a bunch of research into scenic trains because we were looking at going down there for, I think, spring break one year. Mm-hmm. But we didn't make that trip, but we like researched all about these scenic trains. And so it was really nice to go down there and finally ride on one.
Yeah, and it's almost, when I say sightseeing train, the image that comes to mind for me at least is like, oh, you get on a train to look at what's going on outside the train. Mm-hmm. And these trains are almost equally, if not more, about the train itself. Like, yeah. I feel like, especially the part, so we rode it, there's a different route every day of the week, and we rode on Thursday. And
at least
so it was
for this one.
For this train, for the 36+3. And so this was the longest trip from Hakata, which is the station in Fukuoka, the capital of Kyushu in the north, all the way down the west coast of Kyushu to Kagoshima. And so it doesn't really take that long in a regular Shinkansen. It takes like an hour and a half. But for this really leisurely train, we got on at 10 a.m. and we didn't get off until 4:30. So it was an all-day thing, which was really fun. But the beginning part from Hakata to probably Kumamoto, totally, like, the scenery was not special. Like, we were going through just suburbs and it was fine, but it wasn't like, wow, a scenic train.
Well, yeah, because it's the exact same scenery you would see from the Shinkansen that does the exact same kind of like route.
And it wasn't even like, a lot of times we would be in a tunnel or like in like, it wasn't a scenic train, which is fine, but it's just funny because the train is what people get on for. I mean, that's what I got on for, because the train itself is beautiful. And so it's a 6-car train, and it's very elaborate. The first car and the sixth car actually have tatami mat floors, and so you take your shoes off to go in those train cars. And then we were in the fifth car, which just had regular seats, but it was a very pretty room, and actually it had lattice work made out of wood on both the windows, and the floor was also wooden, and the shoji screen doors and the ceilings have this lattice work is called Okawa Kumiko, and it's apparently a local craft work from Okawa in Fukuoka Prefecture, so they're kind of trying to bring in the local craft specialties, which is cool.
Yeah, they try to do a bunch of emphasis on kind of like the local, not like culture, I guess, but
like craftsmanship.
Yeah, and then the stops. They would always make the announcement. They'd be like, please get out and enjoy Japanese hospitality.
Yeah. Yeah, omotenashi is the word for hospitality, and I guess Japan is known for that, but they were kind of playing that up in this. They were like, oh, get out and enjoy the omotenashi, and it was kind of funny because twice on the trip we stopped just at stations, and everybody got out of the train. There was nothing really going on except that local people I'm sure they worked for the train company, but they had set up these stalls, and at one point, like, there were just some old people holding up a, like, painted banner that was like, welcome to our town, and you could buy different snacks, and it was just a 20-minute, like, here we are, like, welcome to our friendly town, and then get back on the train.
Yeah.
You could buy some refreshments.
I don't know the word for it, but there is a word for it, not like extractionary, but like sometimes it almost felt it made me feel a little weird.
Because we were like a captive audience and they were selling things?
Yeah, and we were kind of coming in as like, oh, enjoy the like quaint locals and their hospitality, and they're going to sell you some trinkets. So please go out there and buy their trinkets.
I didn't want it to be like a belittling feeling, like, oh, we've come with money and we're going to buy things.
It kind of felt that way. Because they stopped us at these places that clearly seemed a little like hard hit. Like, I don't know.
I think because we stopped at these tiny stations that you wouldn't get off at otherwise, except that they were like, we're stopping here now for 20 minutes, so everybody get off the train and look at the trinkets. So, yeah, it was a little bit odd, but I did appreciate that they had sprinkled in. It wasn't just like an A to B sightseeing train. I had never been on a train where there were scheduled stops for nothing other than just like, get out and look at this.
It was more, and since we've been on a road trip, it was more like a road trip via train, where you can stop at like the Michi-no-eki and maybe buy some local goods.
I love looking at stuff. I mean, I think maybe that's where we differ, because I'll pull off at a Michi-no-eki even though I don't need snacks. I just want to look at what's on offer. Like, I just want to get out and like, what do we got? Maybe I want something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I talked about the different train cars, and they're, in addition to like the tatami mat room, and then the one we were in, which was it was a very beautiful room, but just regular seats. Mm-hmm. There was also a private, so there's two different private carriages. One was you get a private, like a whole compartment where probably a whole family can fit in there, where there's a long table and maybe 6 people can fit in. And it takes up, like, there's just a very small walkway on one side of the car, and then the whole rest of the side belongs to you. And then the other type of private car, the hallway was in the middle, so you get like half the space, but it's still private.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. It was, I don't know, they also let you just walk around the train, which maybe I wasn't supposed to do, but I didn't walk around the whole time, but I did just like peek in all of the cars. Because I was curious about what they all looked like. And I enjoyed it.
It was definitely more of, like a luxury, like, so we've talked about on the podcast before, we did that other scenic train in Toyama. Mm-hmm. This was definitely more of like a luxury relaxation experience.
Yeah, this was totally different. Yeah. This was like way more expensive. The other one was a sightseeing train, but it was more like, here's something to do for a couple hours. This was like a day excursion that you plan ahead for and go specifically for. Yeah,
and we even had the lunch.
Yeah.
Which was really nice.
The bento boxes.
And that was pretty elaborate.
It was like way more than I thought. So each of our boxes was a double-decker box. And then, I don't know, kind of like kaiseki, where there's a little taste of everything local and seasonal, and you get like a bite of each thing. There was so much, like there was like all these different fish each of us got a shrimp, but then we also got a sazai shellfish thing and egg and pork. And, like, every kind of animal was in there, which was a bit, I don't know, a lot. But
I was going to say, if you do a trip like this and this is probably like a good tip just in Japan in general. If you're doing something where you're paying for a bento and you don't know like what's going to be in it.
Definitely meat.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be meat for sure because they put meat in everything. It's like a seasoning.
It's hard to be vegetarian in Japan.
I was going to say if you are a picky eater, either eat like a big breakfast or make sure you bring snacks because there will definitely be stuff in like a kaiseki meal that you can eat and you will enjoy. But if you're a picky eater and you're not aware of what's coming, you might be a little shocked like when you open the box and there's some like, you know, pickled fish in there that are like little anchovies, and then maybe like something that looks like a snail but it's a shellfish, and all of it's like good and tasty. But if you're a picky eater, maybe either eat a big breakfast or bring snacks with you to tide yourself over.
Or just don't get the bento, I guess.
Yeah, but then you kind of miss out on. We also got the scarf, the handkerchief.
Yeah.
That was a bonus.
I think you should get the bento and just try. I don't know. Sometimes I've taken a bite out of something that doesn't look appetizing to me because it looks so unfamiliar, and then when I've just kind of closed my eyes and been like, I'll just see what it tastes like, it's delicious, so I'm glad that I ate it instead of just having the like, ew, I don't want to try that, it looks weird.
Yeah, that's definitely happened a lot in Japan. I think in particular one of the meals, we had the river fish restaurant in Shirakawa, and there were 3 types of fish.
Yeah.
And I remember one of them was like boiled fish, and I was really not excited about that because I was like, oh, it's going to be weird.
It was a whole fish boiled. Yeah. And it was like,
But it was delicious.
It was probably my favorite of the 3 fish.
Not that deep fried fish?
They were all good. But I wouldn't have, on a menu, I would never have been like, yeah, give me the whole boiled fish. That sounds great.
Yeah. So definitely something to think about. But it was a really nice trip.
Yeah, and I mentioned that we went to Kagoshima, and originally we were actually going to stay around that area and spend more time in Kagoshima, and my friend June lived there for a while, so I know that I could have asked her for some really good recommendations, and I'm kind of bummed that we didn't like spend time there, but at the same time we decided to cancel our hotel in that area because of that earthquake that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Just as like a precaution, because at the time there was that Nankai Trough
alert.
Warning.
Yeah.
So we just didn't want to spend time in that area, but yeah, it ended up, once we got to Kagoshima, to that station, it was an hour and a half back up to Fukuoka to get to our car again, and so that's what we did, which is a bit silly, I guess, to just do a train ride down and back, except that the activity was the train ride.
Yeah, it was like a day trip.
Yeah.
We just spent a bunch of time on trains. But it was fun. So then that night we got back to the car, and that was kind of like the start of our return home. So we started driving north, and we went to Shimonoseki, which is in Yamaguchi Prefecture.
It's like the very edge, so we barely got onto Honshu before we spent the night.
Yeah, they would say, I think I read that it's Honshu's westernmost town. I'm always confused by the geography, but so it's Honshu's westernmost point that's right across from Kyushu.
Yeah, it's like the farthest you can get on the main island before you get on Kyushu.
Yeah. So we went to Shimonoseki, and really no special reason other than it was a reasonable distance to drive that evening after a big train drive.
To a reasonably priced hotel.
Yeah, a reasonably priced hotel.
But the next morning, we started driving along the Japan coast across the island of Honshu.
So we had 3 boxes to check that day, and those were Tsunoshima Ohashi, or the Tsunoshima Bridge, the Motonosumi Inari Shrine, and Unrinji Temple, also known as the Cat Temple. So we woke up early the next day and got on the road, and the first thing we went to was Tsunoshima Ohashi, which really was just this beautiful bridge connecting an island just off the coast of Yamaguchi.
Which is Yamaguchi Prefecture, the farthest west prefecture.
Mm-hmm.
And that bridge, I had never heard of it. Zeb found it, I guess. Did you watch the car commercial it's known for?
No, I was just scrolling on Google Maps. We have talked about like doing different trips down towards like Kyushu, and so sometimes like back when I was in ALT, I would use my desk warming time just to look around on Google and see what's there. And on Google Maps, if you like kind of zoom in on an area, it'll often pop up with like little circles with a photo that are, you know, kind of the most visited or most popular.
Like a suggestion.
Yeah, a suggestion. So surface level, I'll just look around Japan and like look for those, and then kind of zoom in on areas that kind of look interesting, that I feel a little curious about, because it's like, well, what's going on down here? And that's kind of how I came across the bridge, just looking, and then later reading Google reviews. Apparently, it is often used for Japanese car commercials.
I mean, I believe it, because you pull up, and when Zeb was like, we're going to look at this concrete bridge, I was like, it's not even red or detailed or pretty. It's literally just a concrete bridge across the water. Mm-hmm. But then when we got there, it's so long, and the way that it curves is very beautiful. I know it sounds silly for me to just talk about this.
But you love bridges.
I do like bridges.
So it doesn't sound silly.
Well, the best part about it is the water in this part of Yamaguchi is so blue, like so indigo. It's multiple shades. I was most surprised about that.
Yeah, the water was very beautiful, and we got really lucky with the weather too. So it was like a beautiful sunny day with maybe a few nice fluffy white clouds in the sky, and then plenty of blue ocean. But then also there's that cool little island that's kind of like in the middle of the bridge that you like go by. I don't know, it's just very
scenic.
beautiful.
So there's a free parking spot that is on one side of the bridge. So we parked there, got the bikes out, and then we just did a 45-minute spin across the bridge, around the small island. There's a lighthouse out there.
There's also a campground and a nice beach you can swim at. So there's stuff to do there.
Yeah.
But we were kind of like driving. So we just did a quick ride.
These were very like cursory stops on a road trip. I guess that's kind of what road trip stops are like. I mean, you just kind of get out, look at something, take it in, appreciate it, get back in the car.
But yeah, I thought it was very worthwhile to stop at. I don't know. I guess I don't know if I would say like you should go out of your way.
I mean, if you're on a road trip across like the Sea of Japan side of the coast, I would stop there. Yeah.
Yeah, very beautiful.
The next place was also on the Sea of Japan. I think this was this in Shimane Prefecture or still Yamaguchi? I think it was Yamaguchi.
Yeah, I think still Yamaguchi.
Yeah, because the cat temple was still Yamaguchi too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And this had a lot of red to make up for the lack of the red bridge.
So if you've heard of Fushimi Inari Shrine in Kyoto, which is probably the most famous red torii gate shrine, where it has just tons and tons of those red torii gates that you can just walk through for, I mean, not miles, but it's
meters, hundreds of meters,
dozens of feet.
Yeah.
But this has those same kind of idea of the red Inari, of the red torii gates, but it's right next to the coast, and it's not nearly as long, but it does have a very beautiful juxtaposition of the blue water and the red torii gates, and you're on this cliffside.
Yeah, and it's an Inari shrine, so there's some cool like kitsune or fox related paraphernalia there.
Yeah.
And there's a really fun offering box that's like at the top of this giant shrine, and so you can go and everyone tries to like throw their coins
at the top of the torii gate.
Yeah, up at the top of the torii gate. So you try to throw your coins up in there, and
Zeb got it on the second throw. Yeah, and
it was just fun, and that was like another one that I had seen just like scrolling around on Google.
Is more famous than like I had not heard of the bridge. I mean, I guess I know it's generally famous because it has been featured in a couple of car commercials, but this Moto no Sumi Inari Shrine I had heard of, and it was very crowded at the parking area. It was kind of funny because I know that these are religious sites, but it feels very commercial when you go, because when we were pulling in, there's paid parking, which is fine, I get it, I would happily pay for an attraction, but like we're in a standstill line of traffic to get into this parking lot, and then once you pay and park, there's all kinds of other things to buy, like there's a gift shop, and then there's a snack shop, and then when you get into the shrine, there are the like omamori kind of amulets and things, and goshin.
There are a lot of trinkets to buy.
Yeah.
Which they're like religious, and they do have significance, but I think for a lot of travelers, you know, they're kind of souvenirs. Mm-hmm. But then there's like the religious aspect, so it is interesting, and it makes me think about one time when my brother visited, he said that Japan does like capitalism to a level that like beats out American capitalism, and it's just an interesting perspective that there's a lot of commercial stuff going on, and it doesn't mean it's not worth visiting or not worth seeing.
No, and I don't know how to describe, like, I have bought and will continue to buy different things at shrines, but I don't know why this one felt more like I was entering a gift shop than I was entering a shrine.
Maybe because of the paid parking.
Maybe, but even just inside, maybe it's just because I didn't see any, like, there were no monks, there were no, like, shrine
no priests, maidens. Yeah.
There were just no people. It was just other people.
Just like a few old
taking
men
photos,
telling you where to park.
But besides that, it was a very beautiful place. It didn't feel like a religious space, which is okay. I mean, we weren't going there for a religious experience, but
that's true. But I have been to some shrines that I know what you're saying. Like, it did feel like austere, or there was like a bit of like reverence.
Like, it feels holy.
Yeah, this one definitely did not feel holy, and some of it too was kind of. There were some like quirky things, like some of the kitsune statues were a little kind of like, it didn't seem very tasteful. I don't know. It was just.
It was very. I would go. This is sounding more negative than I mean it, but
it was beautiful. It was like
it was.
If you're going to the bridge, you might as well stop off at the shrine.
You should, yeah.
Yeah.
So then the last thing that we saw in Yamaguchi Prefecture before making it to Shimane was something that Zeb really wanted to see because he loves cats. I like cats too, but Zeb loves cats. Fun fact. And this is in, I think, Hagi? Hagi. Hagi in Yamaguchi, and it's called the Cat Temple on Google Maps, but
it's Unrinji, but then in parentheses it says Cat Temple, just so you know that what's going on there.
And if you didn't know before you showed up, when you park, you'll know immediately because it's covered in cats.
Yeah.
And there are a few real cats that live there, but there are so many sculpted wooden cats outside before, like, as you're walking up the steps to the temple. And then when you go in, there is like so it's a Buddhist temple, and there is I guess it's called like a butsudan, like a shrine for Buddha.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know the like proper terms, but then there's almost a comical other room that's just like worshipping cats almost. Like
it's like a cat Buddha.
Like, there's a cat sculpture where he's like the Buddha, and then all the other cat sculptures are bowing down to this cat.
Like worshipping him.
Yeah. And then there are also these huge wooden masks that, it's not even a mask, it's like a full, you know when you go to a sports game and the mascot has like the head?
It's like a helmet.
It's that kind of mascot-sized mask that covers your whole head, except it's made out of wood only, and it's a cat head, and they had 6 of them, and you could put them on
different cats.
The whole thing was so interesting. Like, how does that even start?
They had a bit of a story about there's a loose cat background that's related to it, but this one actually was like an active temple. There were monks there who were kind of consulting with like locals who were dropping in and out. So this one did have a bit more of a feel of, this is like a place of worship.
Yeah.
But then it was weird because then there was like a cat gift shop where you could buy a bunch of like cat goods.
That one felt a little more just like the head priest really likes cats and they just leaned into it. Like, it was a little just more goofy. And also the Google reviews are really funny because sometimes people will like complain, and then like they're overwhelmingly positive, but I just sorted it as what are the lowest reviews. And one of them was like, terrible, I didn't even see any real cats, like 0 stars, how can they call themselves a cat temple when there's no real cats?
And
then the priest had replied, and they were like, so sorry, we do have 4 cats, these are their names, but unfortunately the cats are higher ranked than me, so I can't order them to serve the human guests that come. And he had just like a good sense of humor about things.
But it was very interesting. So that was kind of like a pretty full day, and we were on our way to Oda, which is in Shimane Prefecture. So that's where we ended up that night. We stayed at a really nice guest house. It was like very recently renovated, and one of the nicer guest houses maybe that we stayed in.
And it was more like a hostel than a guest house. Like, we actually had bunks, and when we showed up, they were like it was like a capsule hotel. So Zeb and I had I was in the women's like wing, I guess, and I had my own capsule, but it was very comfortable, and I know that sometimes those can just be like hot and noisy and just like awful. And it was, I mean, it was a shared space, so it was a little bit loud in the morning, but we were getting up early anyway, and I was very comfortable. I was surprised by how crowded it was, not because, like, it wasn't like we were like, oh, we found this place. It was just that we were in this town called Oda, and when we arrived and it was so crowded, I was like, well, I wonder what everybody else is here for, because we were just stopping there to break up the drive. And so when we were like, let's go find something for dinner, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see the downtown. This place is packed. There must be so much to do here. And there was hardly, like, there was no downtown. We were just in this old area, and I was like, well, let me look up what Oda is known for, and it was like, this place used to be a silver mining area.
Yeah.
So I don't know what everybody else was there for.
I suspect maybe there's some like good day trips from that area, because if you remember also in Hagi, we passed by kind of the historical area UNESCO site for like the Meiji industrialization, like ironworks and stuff.
Yeah, there were cute like old historical town things there.
So there's other stuff in the area, so this was a very affordable place to stay. So I'd imagine you could maybe spend a couple of days there and kind of drive around and see the sights. But the big thing is we were not far the next day from
Matsue Castle?
Yeah, Matsue Castle, which is in Shimane, and it's one of Japan's original castles.
Yeah, one of the 12.
And there's some other stuff to do in that area. We didn't go to the shrine, so there's Izuma Taisho, which is again one of Japan's top 3 most powerful Shinto shrines. But we bypassed that and we just went to Matsue Castle, which is a very nice experience.
Yeah, and I think you said it was your favorite castle you've been to.
Maybe it's
which
up there.
I was surprised. I think what's the one in Hyogo? Himeji and Matsumoto, I think, are my 2 favorite, but they're also like the biggest, grandest castles.
Yeah, I think I would rank Matsumoto above Himeji, just because, I don't know.
Are you just bitter that they're raising prices?
No, I'm not bitter about the raising prices. Himeji is like super grand and very beautiful, and it's like very regal, but it does have almost a bit of a, like, it's hard for me to imagine it in use. Kind of, but the others are like a little more worn and a little more rough, and it's kind of easier for me to imagine and get a feel for the history.
Yeah.
Himeji's almost like too clean and sparkly, and like, I don't know. And also I like the black castles just because they stand out more, they feel more unique. So Matsumoto and Matsue are black castles, and I don't know why. They just have, like, for me, there's a nice feel.
Yeah, the wood is really pretty. How the way
also,
that it's
it wasn't
like
crowded.
worn.
Matsue was a very like chill experience. I didn't feel like I was being like herded through kind of like a UNESCO World Heritage site. And, like,
I ran into a lady that was from Kanazawa there. She was very friendly. She was like, oh, where are you from? Because, you know, we don't look Japanese. And I was like, well, we're from America. And she was like, oh, I'm from Kanazawa. And I was like, really? And then she was surprised that I was like so interested. And I was like, we used to live really close to Kanazawa.
Yeah.
And she was shocked and I was shocked.
Also, the castle grounds, they were very nice.
They were.
And you saw one of the top 5 manhole covers.
Yeah. Yeah, if you like collecting things like stamps and stuff, you can start taking pictures of manhole covers like I've been doing. And there was a really good one at Matsue Castle.
Yeah.
But so on this day when we were going from Shimane, the goal for this day was to get to Amanohashidate in Kyoto Prefecture. And so before we got there was one more stop so there's a prefecture between Shimane and Kyoto, and that's Tottori. And so we stopped at the Tottori Sand Dunes.
Yeah, saw a big old pile of sand.
Yeah.
It is that one was like on my like list of things to see in Japan, just because it's, I think, Japan's largest sand dunes. And it's very interesting, but we've seen like our state in America has sand dunes, and I've seen sand dunes and spent time on them. So I was just kind of, I guess I feel bad. That one felt more like checking a box. Oh.
That one, I think I was more impressed by it than you. But yeah, I mean, walking in sand is difficult.
It's not a good experience.
It was hard. We only walked halfway out, and then we were like, yep, it's a lot of sand.
There's so much sand.
And then we walked back to the car. I mean, I think it looked way different than any other like beach or anything I've seen, because everywhere you looked was sand. So it did feel very like desert and not beach.
Yeah.
So I think it was worth seeing.
There's a funny Google review that was like, if you've never seen a desert, worth visiting. So
there were camels there, which I was surprised
weird,
by.
yeah.
We didn't ride the camels, but I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we gave it a good enough chance. Like, we didn't...
No, to be fair, yeah, we kind of passed by it.
We did the, like, road trip stop.
Yeah, like, everybody get out, okay, get back in. Like,
but it was cool. I'm glad that we saw it. And then after Tottori, we made it to... So not Kyoto. We were nowhere close to Kyoto City, but we were out by the coast. And Amano Hashidate is a very long name of basically like a long pine island.
Yeah. It's basically a sandbar that pine trees grow on.
Mm-hmm. But they have a path all the way across the sandbar, so you can walk or you can bike, and that's what we did.
Yeah, and they have rental bikes and stuff, and I think it's only like 4 kilometers long, which I guess is pretty long for like a sandbar. But
yeah,
I don't know. But it's very pretty, and it's one of Nihon Sankei, which is 3 views of Japan. And so we've talked about this before, but this
another
was
list.
Yeah, another list, top 3. This was the 3rd one that we've seen. So now we have seen all 3 Nihon Sankei, which is the Matsushima Pine Island Bay near Sendai in Miyagi Prefecture, Amano Hashidate here in Kyoto, and then Itsukushima Shrine in
like
Hiroshima.
Right outside of Hiroshima. Yeah, and we were looking up who decides what, like, who gets to pick what the 3 prettiest views are.
Yeah.
And you found that it's Hayashi Gaho.
Yeah, he was a Neo-Confucian scholar who was attributed with creating the 3 views in 1643. And I guess he said that these 3 views had all the attributes of Japan.
This is it. This is the prettiest thing you're going to see.
Yeah. But then in 1915, there was a national election to elect 3 new views, which are now 100 years old.
Oh, wait. So is Amano Hashidate one of the new views or one of the original views?
One of the original.
Oh.
So the Amano Hashidate, Matsushima, and Itsukushima Shrine are the original 3. So now there are 3 new views, which came out in 1915, and that was a national election. So that was voted by the people of Japan.
It seems like a more logical way to do that.
Yeah, and then likewise, there are also 3 old and new views of Japan at night. So and then there are multiple other different view categories.
Did you know that? Did you look up what the 3 new views are?
Yeah, one's like pond.
So there's one I was just looking it up. The pond is in Hokkaido, and then Miho no Matsubara is another pine grove. It's in Shizuoka. And then Yabake, which is a river and valley in Oita in Kyushu.
Phenomenal.
So completely different areas than the original 3 views.
And also, looking at the photos, I like briefly glanced at the photos of those on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
For me, personally, still not 3 of the best views that I've seen in Japan.
Yeah, it's hard to pick like 3 top anything, even though Japan really likes lists. But,
yeah.
I mean, it's fun to have 3 because then it does, like, that's why we went to go see Amano Hashidate, and it was a nice place.
And it was on the way.
Yeah, but but yeah, I mean, if you get recommendations from someone, it's always fun to be like, yeah, I'll go check that out.
Yeah. And Annie was very pleased with the breakfast at the hotel we stayed in that night.
Yeah, so we were just staying in like a business hotel in Kyoto Prefecture. There's like nothing special to note about the cheap hotel we were at. And that's why I was thinking, oh, it has breakfast in the morning. We'll just like eat some rice and natto and get on the road. And they had so much going on at this breakfast. I was thrilled.
It mostly seemed like the previous night's dinner's leftovers, but it was very good. And I think maybe it was a standout breakfast specifically because we've also had one of the worst breakfasts that we've ever had during this road trip.
Where there literally was just rice and natto and some like meatballs and like something that was supposed to be yogurt but looked kind of like just lumpy milk.
Yeah, it was very strange. I wouldn't have called it yogurt. It was very gelatinous.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna mention that because it makes me sad, but
oof. Yeah.
No, but I did think it's interesting just to compare Japanese breakfast and like Western breakfast, or what I would expect in a hotel in America.
Mm-hmm.
And in America, I would expect like cereal, pastry type stuff, maybe some sausage or bacon and scrambled eggs.
Waffles pancakes,
even.
muffins.
You know those like where you pour
Biscuits.
the waffle mix into the
Yeah.
iron? That
Oh, I
was
know.
like top tier hotel breakfast. I would still get excited about that. In Japan, I mean, it varies widely based on the quality of hotel you're staying in, and we've been staying in some pretty cheap hotels. So the bad breakfast we had, like, we kind of deserved that because of the price we paid for the hotel.
Except it was in a restaurant.
But anyway, in Japan, something that I see on breakfast buffets that I never see in America is salad. And a lot of times, salad is a breakfast item in Japan because I guess the thought is that you start the day with something fresh and green and healthy. That's what I've been told, at least.
Really? Because also there was fried fish and karage, so fried chicken.
Yeah.
So you could also start your day with fried food.
I mean, I guess it's just like you could start your day in America with like some nice muesli and like fiber-filled oats or something, or
Yeah.
you can eat a Pop-Tart, and both are American breakfasts.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that Japanese breakfast is just Japanese food.
Yeah.
It's just you're eating it in the morning.
There's not really like breakfast
Yeah,
food.
it's kind of the exact same as Japanese lunch or dinner. It's just you're eating it first
Just
thing in the morning.
Yeah. So that stood out to me. But the last day of like fully driving, we went from Kyoto Prefecture and we made it back to Ishikawa.
Yeah.
And it felt really like a little homecoming to be like, oh, we're back in Ishikawa.
It really did, especially because we were back on roads that we recognize, like even from, bike rides and that we've often driven through or often like traveled by. So that was like a really nice feeling of kind of being like, oh, if I really like, if for some reason I didn't have a phone,
Yeah.
I would make it home. Like I know where I am.
I was also relieved when we got it back into like, okay, if the car broke down, we're like within the kind of reasonable tow zone that we could get it back to because we've been leasing this car from a company that's in Ishikawa Prefecture. So yeah, once we got back in that vicinity, I was like, okay, the car's been really treating us well. Like maybe we really are gonna make it.
Yeah.
So the first thing we saw on this day was not until Fukui Prefecture, and it was another original castle. We saw Morioka Castle. And this one was also very nice, had some cool, like, very long steps leading up to the castle. And it was built in 1576, another one of the 12 standing still. And it was only an hour away from where we lived, but for some reason, I mean, I guess we just never really made it to see it until now.
I think because it would have been a drive, so we would have had to drive specifically to go see it, because it's not very accessible via public transportation. Like you'd have to do like if we from where we were, we'd have to do like a few connections,
like a couple trains and then a bus.
So it would have been like a pretty long journey.
Yeah.
So we just never took the time to drive to come see it, but we finally got to go see it, and it was again a black castle, a little quaint and small, but very nice.
Yeah, I liked that one. And then the next place we stopped was in Ishikawa Prefecture, and it was the Yunokuni no Mori. It was a craft village, so in Komatsu, which is the part of... So Ishikawa has kind of three regions. There's the Noto Peninsula, then there's the area around Kanazawa, around the capital, kind of near where we lived, and then on the closer to Fukui part, there's the Kaga area, and that's where the Kutanayaki pottery is, and the crafts, and that's where the airport is. It's also where the Kaga Onsen area is. And so that's where we were staying on the final night of our road trip. And this craft village that's in Komatsu, I'd been wanting to go. I think you would have gone just to like do something with me, but it wasn't really on your want to go list. But I was excited about it because it's this... So they use the word village, but nobody lives there, but it is just different workshops, I guess, that are in these old style buildings with thatch roofs. Not thatch roofs, but like,
some of them were
the Gashozukuri type roofs.
It reminded me a lot of, and maybe this is like niche, but it reminded me a lot of Old Salem in North Carolina. It's kind of like a recreated village type area, but there's stuff like Old Salem had like a bakery you could go see, and then you could go see the old inn, and then you could go see this other thing. It was kind of like that.
Yeah.
Where
these were all craft workshops. So like each building was a special craft things. So they had the kaga using silk dyeing in one building, gold leaf crafts in another, pottery with kutanayaki, glass blowing, paper, confectionery stuff. And you could do, so you paid, I think, 500 yen to just enter and walk around.
Like 550.
And then once you're in this little area, which that in itself was just kind of a cool theme park that you could just see different workshop things. But then you could also pay to participate in and make these little crafts. And that was really cool. So we ended up making some washi paper postcards.
Yeah.
And we ate some ice cream. I was having a great day. It was like the best kind of theme park.
It was very nice. It definitely was like trinket capital of Ishikawa.
Yeah.
And I think there was a slight disappointment for me in that you pay an entry fee to go in and then you have to pay for everything separately.
Oh.
But I think it was okay. Like, it was probably worth the money just to go in and like walk around and like see the buildings.
Yeah.
But I guess conversely, you can go somewhere like Shirakawa and the buildings are free.
Well, I don't think the buildings were why you go. I think you would go and then you would watch people make these crafts. But it wasn't quite like
it wasn't like there were experts.
Craftsmen.
Yeah, there weren't experts just like honing their trade in there. You were like watching other novices like
make some paper.
Yeah,
I guess so. So it wasn't quite like, because in North Carolina there's also this place that I'm totally blanking on the name, but my mom she wants to go there because you can get experts to teach you about the crafts, but then you can also watch them create things. And so there wasn't a whole lot of like, I could try my hand at glass blowing, but I wasn't watching a glass blowing master create a new work of art, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't like there were resident artists that you could see.
What I was
like,
thinking of.
you can watch them like do their stuff.
No, but I thought it was a really cool idea.
Yeah, I still thought it was nice. And if you're buying like souvenirs and stuff,
you can make souvenirs.
Well, you can make souvenirs, but also you can get like every single type of souvenir, like the paper crafts or the gold leaf crafts or the glass stuff.
Yeah, and it was all local, like crafts that are regionally specific, so that was cool.
Yeah, and it was nice. So that you could go, but I guess it is like each activity is something like 20 to 30 minutes, and each one probably costs something like 1,000 to 2,000 yen. So like
not that expensive though.
It could add up quickly. Though
if you wanted,
if you wanted to do like 5 things and then buy some stuff on top of it, it could be expensive.
That's true.
But it was cool.
And then we stayed, for the last night of our road trip, we stayed in a really cool, fancy ryokan, the Houshi Ryokan, which happens to be the world's oldest continually run family business, which is, so it started in a mind-blowingly early 718, like the year 718 is when the business started. And
if you've listened to the podcast for a while, there was the episode where we were on a bike trip last summer and we stayed in a really cool guest house on the Nakasendo, and we were blown away that guy, he was like the 17th generation to own and operate his inn that he was living in, and this building is on the 48th generation.
I can't even
3
comprehend
times
that.
as many.
Like 48 people ahead of me. Like I can't even go back 6 people. 48 people. I
mean, I can reliably go back 2. Like that I know, like first name basis. Like
yeah. It's just so crazy that at this point, like, if you have a kid, the kid has to take over the inn.
Yeah, it would almost be more of a blessing to be like the second born child, because then you kind of have an excuse to not join the family business, because it's like, oh, well, it's the eldest sibling's responsibility. Like, I'm the second born, I can go.
I do feel a little bit bad for this inn, because until fairly recently, like the last 5 years or so, they also had the Guinness World title of oldest hotel in the world. And then there's a hotel that's in Yamanashi Prefecture, so close to Mount Fuji area, and they had the title, actually, they argued that and successfully proved, by like 5 years or something crazy. And so imagine being like the oldest hotel in the world and you started in like 718 and no one can even touch that. And then there's another hotel in the same country like 5 hours away that's like actually, and they're like 5 years older than you, and they take the title away.
I think the continually owned family business title is more impressive though.
Yeah.
I think the oldest is cool, but the oldest like has probably changed hands a bunch of times. But the fact that this one's been in the same family for so long, to me, is more impressive than just being the run-of-the-mill oldest. But we have learned that there are these disputes, because even among the 12 original castles, there are a bunch of disputes about which castle is the oldest castle.
Yeah.
And some of it's hard because the record keeping wasn't exact.
48 generations. I mean, that's crazy.
That's some good record keeping.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really interesting, a nice stay, and they had like a cool onsen. And
when we showed up, so yeah, it's in Awazu Onsen, which is the smallest of the Kaga Onsen area like villages. I guess each of the Kaga Onsen area hot springs has their source from a different hot spring, and so they all kind of claim different healing properties at each of the water sources, even though they're in like a 30-minute radius. But Awazu Onsen is the smallest of those, but it's very quaint. And we were kind of driving around, and we pulled in like right at 3, and I was driving and I was thinking like, oh, we'll just park and just kind of get our stuff together because we're like right on time. Like I wasn't really ready. And as we pull in, they're like, welcome, like hand us your keys, we'll park the car for you, like we'll get you the luggage out of the car. And we've been on this road trip for like, this is the last day of a 3-week road trip. Like our car is not very inviting. No. And I was like, oh gosh, okay. So, and
also our luggage is like, we have 2 bikes in the back of the car, and like miscellaneous bags, and like literally just like plastic bags that we've been like dumping stuff in. There wasn't like food or like smelly things in the car, but we had eaten at a convenience store for breakfast, and there was like a bag of trash and like some empty coffee cups in the car. We were like finishing up our coffee, and I still had a little bit to drink, so I'd get out of the car and I'm like holding a couple coffee cups and like some random stuff, and like I think a bag of like peanuts.
Yeah,
and then they're like, great, come
us
in. And we're like, okay. And then they're like, all right, now we're gonna go into the tatami room and we're gonna bring you some matcha. And it was kind of like and so some guy standing there was like, I'll take those cups. I was like, okay.
I was so embarrassed because they like valet park our car, which is like embarrassing in itself, and then they usher us into this welcoming room, and I look over and Zeb is in his like safari hat with glasses, holding like a trash cup in one hand and a bag of peanuts in the other, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like we are not ready to be like in this fancy hotel.
Well, you didn't warn me.
I didn't know it was happening.
Yeah.
But anyway, we survived that. They were just being very kind, and I was embarrassed by our, I guess, slob lookingness.
And to be fair, I think the hotel is past the point of being exclusive. I bet there was a point in this hotel's history where it was like very hard to book a room there, and it was probably like generational families went there, and it was probably a little more exclusive, but now they clearly let the riffraff come in and like
we were the
rent
riffraff.
rooms. So yeah, we were definitely the riffraff, but
we pulled it together. Like it was fine, but I was a little bit embarrassed by not being at my best when we were being welcomed. And they gave us matcha and a little
a real matcha in real Japan.
I was making fun of like, I guess when you come to Japan, you're like, I'm drinking actual matcha in actual Japan.
There's a funny Instagram video where some Japanese guy was making fun of people doing that, and yeah. Anyway,
it was very nice. I felt very taken care of.
Yeah, and it was really nice to have. I mean, so to be fair, there's like a onsen type spa thing at the current hotel that we're staying at, the Appa. I don't think I'll get in it. So it was like really nice to have one, like, you know, for this time, like last good onsen experience. And it had an outdoor bath. Yeah. So it was very nice.
I got out there, reflected. I thought, oh, this is probably my last time in a bath for a while.
Yeah, I got out there, floated around, really thought about what we've been doing. Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah.
And then we woke up super early the next day and drove back to good old Uchinada.
Yeah. Back to our neighborhood. Yeah, this is a long episode, but this is the final day. This is today. And so after kind of being like waited on hand and foot, like I was a princess, it was hard for me to leave the fancy ryokan.
You know, it was that nice, but
no, it was just, you know, they were very, you know,
very
ready
welcoming.
to take care of us.
You know what they were not ready for?
They were not ready for us to check out.
Yeah, we got down there at like 6:50, and the guy was like, "Can you wait until 7?" And we were like, "Ah."
Yeah, I was like, "We already paid. Like, you can just give us our key." Like, which
and
is
to be
fine.
fair, yeah, it wouldn't have been a big issue, but we were kind of like rushing because our friend was keeping some of our boxes at his house, and we were trying to meet him as he was leaving for work so that we could get our stuff out of his hair and then repack our lives into these bags. And so we kind of like had like a time that like we were like trying to go.
Yeah.
And then we get down there like ready, and we're like, oh, we're even early, we'll be like no trouble, like no traffic. And then they're like, can you, like, sorry, but you have to wait until 7. I was like,
Yeah, I didn't really understand, but I was like, whatever, okay. So we got to our friend's house, and he had very kindly kept our giant bike box in his apartment. And even nicer, because he drove to work, we could take his parking spot and just kind of spill out our car's contents into the parking spot and repack everything. So that's what we did this morning. It was kind of a lot of logistics for the final day. But
really the past like 4 weeks has been a lot of logistics.
Wow.
Like with the planning of moving out, and then the road trip, and then repacking things and shipping bags, and then
yeah, but a lot of that was we brought that on ourselves.
Well, like we didn't need to do this road trip.
Yeah, it was a huge blessing that we could. But yeah, just as any time you go on a international flight, the day before is always going to be a little bit chaotic. So today was a little bit chaotic, but it was fine. Once we had the bikes actually packed up, I felt a lot better. And from there, it was a bit of a kind of hurry to get everything checked off before the day finished. So we took the bikes to Yamato, to the Kuroneko shipping area, and that way we could ship one bike, the smaller bike that actually fits within the dimensions because it's in a bag. We could ship that in the duffel ahead to Zeb's airport because we have to fly separately. Because Zeb's ticket was paid for from his work. Very nice.
Blessed.
So he's flying out of Komatsu, I'm flying out of Tokyo. So if you remember, we had already shipped 3 things from Kyushu, so those should be waiting for me in Tokyo tomorrow. And then we were able to ship 2 other things to Komatsu for Zeb today.
Which is also kind of nice since I'm leaving a day later, again, because the reimbursement travel agency thing. Because I'm leaving a day later, we also had time to use Kuroneko to ship things to Komatsu. Also, because Komatsu is so close. So kind of like a blessing a little bit. So yeah, we were able to get things shipped there. So another big duffel and a bike. And so now we're just in a room with just a few bags and another bike. But
yeah, the hotel let us keep the bike here in the hotel, to do the luggage drop off early, and that was really nice.
Yeah, if you're staying that night, they'll often let you show up early that day and then just leave your luggage.
And that was crucial because we had to return the car.
Yeah.
And so, like I mentioned earlier, we had this leased car, and we returned that, and that was kind of shocking to me because we just kind of gave them the keys, and I was waiting to have some paperwork to have them look at the car or just make sure it works, like we didn't dent it.
So to be fair, she did make sure it worked.
Because she drove us to the station, which was really nice
friendly.
of her. But yeah, there was no, like... They didn't look to see if we had, like, dented it or broken anything. Like, they were just kind of like, great, like, thanks for bringing the car back.
Yeah. To be fair, they did it later because I did get an email, and I had totally forgotten. So it was, like, very, like, friendly of them to do this. We had paid, like, a pretty big deposit when we first got the car, which I did not remember at all. And I got an email from them that was like, we want to give you some money back from your deposit. And I guess they did finally look over the car, and they did decide, well, we need to keep this much money to kind of like take care of some things, clean it, and here's how much you'll get back. So it's very friendly.
Really nice.
Because also he could have just not emailed me and kept that money, and I would not have even thought about it.
So that was a huge good news.
Yeah, then we kind of rode the rails again back to Kanazawa.
And here we are.
Yeah, full circle. So now we're here in the Appa. And then Annie had kind of her last little coffee time with her Kanazawa Coffee Club.
I don't want to think about it.
I know, and then I went and had coffee time at Curio.
Yeah, with your friend.
Yeah, it's a nice coffee shop here in Kanazawa that I'd started to go to. And that was like, I guess emotional is maybe not the right word, but it was very rewarding to go into a place where you feel like a local in a foreign country.
Yeah,
because
where
it was
you
fun
can
to go
see
in.
somebody you recognize.
Yeah,
and
and
be
he was like
welcomed.
excited to see me, and he was like, "Oh, Zeb, like, how you doing?" It was a good feeling.
Yeah. That is something that I'll miss because wherever we go next, it's always going to take time when you move to make friends again and to have a routine again.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that I'm going to miss, to be somewhere familiar with people that you can run into and be like, oh, hey, like, good to see you.
Yeah.
So
I had that moment too when we went to the Family Mart in Uchinada, and I forgot. I was like, oh yeah, I might run into like
yeah,
some
we're in our
students
neighborhood
in here.
again.
Yeah.
Well,
But it was kind of like a really nice day where now feels very real, I guess, that we're leaving.
Yeah, I'm looking out the window. I can see the train tracks from our window. Like
Yeah.
tomorrow, I'll just wake up and walk to the station and then be on my way back to America.
Yeah.
Wild.
And now we have like enough stuff with us that it feels like we could just be on vacation, minus the giant box.
There is a bike box.
Yeah, minus that, we have enough stuff with us that it feels like we could just be on vacation. It feels like, oh, maybe we don't live here anymore.
Mm.
So yeah, here we are. And this is Annie's last night. I have an additional night just because of the flight thing. So yeah, I guess we'll wrap this up pretty soon and go get maybe some sushi.
Yeah, to
for
celebrate.
dinner. But before we do that, do you have a word of the week?
The last word of the week. Well, mine, maybe I'll go first because it's related to what you were just talking about. And it's nimotsu. I know you already know what this one is.
Yeah,
it's
luggage.
Suitcases. Yeah, because we had a lot of like jumbling around of nimotsu.
So much nimotsu. Takusan nimotsu arimasu.
What is your word?
Mine is kaigan.
Kaigan. Is that coastline?
Yeah, coastline, because I was really impressed with Yamaguchi and Shimane Prefecture. I thought those prefectures were like really beautiful, and I would definitely like to go back to that area again in the future. And so I was just very impressed with the kaigan of Yamaguchi and Shimane prefectures.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, so this kind of brings us to the end of this episode. And if you listened this far, first of all, thanks for listening.
That's a long one.
I know, we're getting up there. But we will be releasing another episode next week when we're in America, and that'll kind of be like a debrief, kind of like wrap up about our time living in Japan. And then just a forewarning, after that, we'll be taking a break.
Bye.
Yeah, bye. From podcasting, because we're going to have some time in America, and we want to kind of enjoy time with friends and family. And honestly...
What are we going to talk about?
Yeah, we probably won't have much to say. So be sure to tune in next week for a little episode where we kind of share maybe some final thoughts about our time living in Japan. So if you have any questions or you have anything to say...
Because we do.
Yeah, be sure to shoot us an email, and maybe we can discuss it next week.
ramblingramsbottoms@gmail.com.
Yeah, and get it in there, because it might be the last time for a little bit that we'll be able to discuss it.
Yeah, but thanks for listening to our ramblings as always, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.